Welcome back. My name is Dr. Jennifer Boney, better known as DocJenFit, your personal doctor of physical therapy. And I'm so excited to be talking to my belly birth mamas today. So if you didn't know, I actually had a C-section myself. So I'm just going to show my lovely little scar here. And what I want to talk about today is scar mobilization and when you begin early scar mobilization, what that really looks like. What I'm not going to talk about is if you're feeling numbness, tingling around the area and what you can do for that. But if you need help and support with that, please let me know in the comments. Or if you need other support around what's going on with your scar or how you can start to mobilize and do mobility, I'm going to show more videos on scar mobilization as I continue to heal myself. So don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments specifically what you have questions about. Now, I am currently 8 weeks postpartum, so I'm going to talk about when this scar mobilization is happening, what's usually recommended, and what I don't always agree with, especially now going through it myself. So typically you can start scar desensitization around the area around 3 weeks. Again, we're not going to show it directly in this video, but if you need more help and you're feeling numbness or anything around that feels kind of funky around the scar, let me know below so that I can create a video for that. However, once we start mobilization, we want to make sure that everything is starting to be healed. So I wouldn't recommend starting really around the scar even until about 6 weeks. Now, sometimes it's recommended that you can start about 3 to 4 weeks and start moving tissue around. And though there's healing that is taking place currently, we want to make sure that we're not going too aggressive. So what can happen when you're about 3 weeks postpartum is that we can start some mobilization around the rib cage area. We're far enough away from the scar that we're not going to put too much tension or pressure onto that scar area. So around 3 or 4 weeks, I recommend doing some mobilization up underneath this rib cage. You can do it in sitting like I'm doing, or you can lay back so you relax the tissue a little bit more and just make sure that you kind of grab those fingers underneath the rib cage and start to relax and breathe into any tightness or restriction. Typically, the ribs are already flared from pregnancy, so this is actually might not feel bad at all, but it's good to just at least continue that mobilization up above the abdominal tissue so that we can then start to mobilize down below a little bit later. So around 6 weeks, that's what I'm going to show you today since I'm 8 weeks, and so I'm post this. We can start to mobilize the tissue up and around the scar. We're not quite going to go on the scar. Some people say around 8 weeks you can start to go on the scar, and though again there's a lot of healing taking place, there is still a lot of pain and pressure that a lot of people will feel. So I actually recommend not starting to go on the scar until about 12 weeks, especially because the mobilization that we want to do on the scar is going to involve a lot of pulling and rolling and moving that tissue around. Scar mobilization is so important because the fascia is not just connected here, but it's what connects into our pelvic floor all the way around our back and up through our abdominal region. So if we're not mobilizing what's happening around the scar and on the scar, we can start to feel a lot of pain, pressure. You can even have pain with sex from the connection to the pelvic floor. You can start to have back pain. So mobilizing the scar tissue, no matter when you've had the C-section, is going to be so important. So even if you've had a C-section years ago, this is still going to be important that you can start to implement today. So we're going to come onto your back. You can do this in bed, especially if you're still just like relaxing or don't have the baby on you for right now. Okay, so again, my scar is super low, right? So we're not going to go on the scar right now. So I can keep my shirt right, keep my pants right there, and I'll lift hair. So again, that mobilization underneath the rib cage can be here, underneath, just holding, taking some breaths, relaxing. A lot of people complain of rib cage still being flared, so you don't have to work on that too much if you aren't feeling any restriction. However, what we can start to do is just starting way above the scar. I'm actually going to start to pull in my abdominal tissue, and I'm kind of rolling the tissue and massaging from pressing down and like a moderate pressure and then up toward my rib cage. Okay. And here, what I'm starting to do is, do I already feel some restriction? Okay. So am I already feeling some tissue restriction and some tightness just from pulling? Now, the abdominal region hardly gets any attention when we're talking about, massage work and everything. Everyone focuses on our back and our neck, but we hardly pay any attention to our abdominals. And this is really important because we need to stand tall so that we take pressure off of our back, right? So it's not only just good for C-section scar mobilization, but it's also just good in general. And then what you'll notice is I start to move down a little bit lower. So now I'm moving down toward my C-section scar. So you want to make sure you go down gradual, seeing each layer. If you have a lot of resistance in a certain area, maybe that's where you're focusing for those few days or for the week. Okay. You don't have to go all the way up near the scar if you're having a lot of restriction. Okay. So I'm pulling down, then I'm going to get a little bit closer and I'm going to pull. And what I feel as I get closer is I do feel some restriction. So this is my area in particular where I'd be working. So just kind of, again, moderate pressure down and a pull. So a little massage. And you can go in different directions. So you don't have to go just straight up toward the rib cage. You can also pull toward the side. What does it feel like if I pull toward the side and toward the other side? Okay. So pulling toward different directions around that scar is also really important, and just on the stomach tissue in general. Then we're going to make just little circles. So I'm going to put some pressure, again, a little bit moderate pressure down and go in some circles. Okay. Make sure you go both directions. So I'm above the scar and I'm going in different directions. Okay. And that's what I'm doing right above the scar. Now, right below the scar, we actually have our pubic bone here. So we don't have a lot of movement, but what you can do is just, you want to make sure you're not on the scar. I'm going to go below the scar and I can put some pressure down toward that pubic bone, down toward my hips. Okay. And just puts a little bit of pressure downwards. But again, I do not want to touch on my scar, put too much pressure there if I'm having a lot of tension and a lot of pain. So this is what you're starting with. Even if it's been years, if you haven't done any mobilization on that scar, I would still start around the scar. Even if it's been way past 6 weeks, just starting around it is going to help so that you're not putting too much pressure on that area. Okay, so that is where we are starting. And then we'll go to the second mobilization. So for the second one, I'm actually going to take some therapy balls from Tune Up Fitness, and we'll link somewhere our affiliate link to Tune Up Fitness. I love all of their balls. They're amazing. It's the only ones we use because there's some give. It's not a lacrosse ball. I don't like lacrosse balls. Too tough, too hard on the body when we're trying to create some gentle mobilization. Okay. So this is going to have a little give. That's why I love it. This is the therapy ball, so it's not going to be quite as big as like their alpha ball or some of the other ones. So I love starting with this one. Any area in the body honestly feels so good, but we're going to address the pelvic floor. So like I said, because their scar is so low, there's so much connection to the pelvic floor. And if we have a lot of tension through this entire area, we might get pain with sex. We might get leaking. You might be saying, I didn't have a vaginal birth. Why am I still getting leaking? Well, you went through all of pregnancy, putting that pressure down into that pelvic floor. And then if we have any scar restriction, that can still cause some restriction to that pelvic floor. So taking a ball here, we're actually going to sit on it. So I'm going to take this, and at first, before I put the ball there, actually, I want to just take my hand and find my sit bone. So if you take your hand and you find your sit bone right where you sit on top of, this is the bone we're going to flip our fingers on the inside, and that's where we're going to start to mobilize. We're not going up any holes. We're not going any sensitive areas. We're just going to the tissue. So if I find that sit bone and I wrap my finger around it, that is where I'm going to be placing this ball. Okay. So I'm going to just start on one side. So I'm going to place that ball on the inside. and sit. If it's uncomfortable for you to sit in this cross-legged position, which you might have to work on some hip mobility then, I have some other videos for you for that. Well, then you're going to want to sit on a chair or something hard. So we don't want to be on like a soft surface, since we are trying to create some mobilization and some relaxation in that tissue. So finding that area that might be a little bit more restricted, maybe you need to scoot forward a little bit back, and you find the area that's like, oh wow, I don't want to sit there. That's where you get to sit. And all we're going to be working on is some slow breathing. So you can wrap your hands around that low rib cage, breathing in, breathing out, just relaxing. And I like to do just about 1 minute to 2 minutes on each side. And you're just focusing on slow, relaxed, diaphragmatic breathing, trying to create some relaxation within that tissue so there's not so much tension. Okay. Unlock your jaw when you do this, relax in your body, and just try to breathe. You can have some support on your back if sitting up is too much tension within the body. And you're going to want to do that on both sides. Again, this is going to be really helpful. We tend to forget that our pelvic floor is connected around this fascia, and that we only focus on around what's happening directly at the scar, but we can't forget we need to mobilize up and around the entire scar and down and around. And I'll have another one so that we can help to support our back even more if you have a C-section or a belly birth. If there are other areas that you feel might be restricted or you have more questions on, please drop it in the comments below. And again, this wouldn't be started until 6 weeks or beyond. And when we start to touch directly on the scar, we're really waiting until about 12 weeks. If you feel comfortable, you can start around 8 weeks, but I would recommend starting more toward that 12-week mark to really ensure that that scar tissue all the way under the layers are really healed so that we can start to move and play around with that. Don't forget, if you love what you're learning, I have so much more in stock for you. So hit that subscribe button, check out the other videos I've done in the past, and leave any comments of any suggestions that you have for videos in the future. And I can't wait to help you feel incredible and amazing within your body.